guaranteed not to be interrupted by Lance Stroll. Welcome back to Motorsport 101. Whatever timing works is fine. I'll leave that to King and the magical powers to decide whether he wants to meta my own cold open or not. But, hi gang, welcome to episode 306 of Motorsport 101. I am your friendly neighbourhood host, Trey Harrison, and you're getting this episode live as we're recording here on Friday night, personally, in my case, from West London, and from all over here, Scotland and the United States. But thanks to everyone that's tuning in on YouTube. Let's just say you've been a very patient bunch, and we are very grateful for that. So thank you sincerely for sticking around. And welcome to what we're calling Classic Season here on Motorsport 101, where we talk and break down all the fun stuff from Monaco. We got Mugello's MotoGP, we'll be talking about that next week, as well as the Indy 500, and of course that'll feature heavily on this week's edition of the show, as we of course talk about qualifying and the dreaded bump day, making its return for the first time in 2 years. But in the meantime, we'll introduce our esteemed panel. First of all, Ryan King. Hello, sir.
Hello. I've been bashing away trying to get everything to work for this episode.
King, it was a valiant effort.
It really was. It wasn't through lack of trying. Like one day, maybe on Patreon, in the show notes, I'll say exactly how much of an unmitigated disaster the last better part of 2 hours have been. But we've got there.
The last 72 hours have been some of the darkest in the history of the Motorsport 101 community.
It's been tricky, but we got there in the end. That's the most important thing. Cam, talk to me. How's it going?
It's going okay. I have gigabit internet now. And it's the fucking internet. Best! I have the fastest internet on the podcast!
Yeah.
Boston over New York again. What's up?
He's not been smug about this at all for the last 2 hours since he's had it installed, I promise. He's not mentioned it at all.
You've never seen anyone install a router faster because I had to get home from work, grab the router, run to the Comcast store, have my plan upgraded, and then come home and install it all in time to get on my computer and realize that our streaming and video platform took a massive dump everywhere.
And that was only like the third highest ranking technical problem we've had in the last 2 hours, which is crazy. And that one worked out relatively faultlessly. Sadly, RJ isn't with us. He's travelling as we speak at the moment. But we drafted in a wonderful replacement, our favourite super sub. She hasn't been here for almost a year and a half, amazingly. Over 80 episodes, thanks to Jason for filling us in on that one. But we're very happy to welcome back the lovely Zoeey Hamilton. Hello, Zoeey.
Hello. I'm pleased to announce that I'm currently sober.
Don't believe it.
The way tonight has gone, honestly, there'd have been no promises on this information.
No. We run for a second, because my night went from 0 to 100 real quick, because like, okay, I got everything set up for the stream tonight, gonna show up like 15 minutes early to make sure everything works. Then I check our Discord server where we do all the production chat. I glance at the phone, and it's like, Dre's like, King, do you have a link for Zoeey? And I'm like, wait, Zoe's going to be on the show tonight? I have everything set up for 3 people because I knew RJ was going to be here.
Hey, King, you always said you wanted more guests on.
Well, it's one of those things, you know, we at the Motorsport 101 Discord, $10 on Patreon if you want to join the supporters club. We often have very eccentric late night conversations, sometimes over sports, sometimes over watching King backflip end over end in an Indy car, and sometimes things get talked about in those conversations that we don't remember the next day for various alcohol related reasons. I didn't drink at all during Indy qualifying.
Zoeey might have done. Especially if you remember her allegiances to certain drivers in the IndyCar field, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. it may have been a famous 500 replay that we may have featured on the show a couple of years ago. Just throwing it out there. But
I
in
was
the
drunk before the fifth car had qualified.
Says it all. In this episode 306, we are going to talk about the Monaco Grand Prix, and most importantly, the two unmitigated disasters at the front of the field. One involving a car in red, and another one involving a car in silver, as the car in purple went off and took a large opposing...
Silver? Sir, what year is this?
Well, black.
Black.
No, AMG.
Ineos Black. Trademark.
It's Ineos Black. I'm sorry. I missed that important detail. I forgive me. That was unprofessional of me. I apologise. But yes, one car in black, Ineos Black, and red. And we'll talk about those varying degrees of disaster. And Cam may or may not piss himself laughing. That, and then we'll talk about Indy 500 qualifying as well. We'll be talking about Scott Dixon qualifying on pole for the fourth time in his career. Some shocking names in the last row shootouts. One team's collective struggle, and a look at the rulebook. Because who doesn't love a look at the rulebook on this show? Because there was some interesting interpretation of the rules that were used throughout the weekend as well, which is bound to come up as well. But get the housekeeping out of the way. We're on youtube.com/Motorsport 101 right now. Thanks if you're watching. If you're watching, leave a like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thanks for tuning in. Facebook.com/Motorsport 101. We're on Twitter at Motorsport_101. If you'd like to follow our handles personally, you can at Harrison101HD, at Ryan Eric King, at CBuckley917, and at Zoeey if you want to follow Zoeey on Twitter. She's a very keen IndyCar writer as well. She occasionally blogs about it, but generally tweets about it a lot as well.
I'm doing several drinking games.
Well, I didn't want to say
I will have one
for.
I will have one. I will have one set up.
So, if you want to take part in the 500 drinking game, all I say is good luck, and as they say on Wipeout, big balls. So have fun with that if you haven't already. So you can follow Zoeey on Twitter over there if you haven't already. Please do give her a good Motorsport 101 bump. That'd be lovely. You could follow us on Instagram at Motorsport 101 Pod, I should say. Thank you very much. And our website motorsport101.com. But if you really, really like us, you can back us financially on Patreon. Patreon.com/Motorsport 101. $5 gets you early access to all of the audio versions of the show. You can upgrade to the $10 version to get video early access, as well as access to the Supporters Club of our Discord server, where you can listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded. Shout out to Kelly, Daniel, Vic, Joseph, Aaron was in the live. You actually get donated on the super chat as well. Very generous of you. We completely did not deserve it at all, despite the technical problems. Very generous of you, Aaron. Thank you very much. Shout out to everyone that's watching along on YouTube. Much, much appreciated. Hope you guys enjoy the next hour or so. You can check us out on there if you haven't already. Like I said, patreon.com/Motorsport 101. So, without further ado, we'll get into the Monaco Grand Prix.
You know, things are wild when this this section of the episode is titled Mercedes Post-Nut Clarity. Without a doubt, the worst weekend of the 2021 season so far for the silver, or should we say black arrows. Not only did Max Verstappen steamroll the field to a comfortable win without challenge, Lewis Hamilton struggled in qualifying, then lost multiple places due to an ineffective undercut to finish 7th. Unfortunately for Valtteri, who placed the car 3rd in qualifying, was running 2nd at the time, his first pit stop involved his right front wheel nut being stripped of all of its splines during the first pit stop, refusing to come off of his car and causing a freakish DNF. It was on the car until Tuesday 43 hours later. Germany 2019 ain't got shit on this pit stop.
No.
With Sergio Perez also finishing P4, Red Bull gained a 30-point swing on Mercedes and have taken the lead in both championships for the first time since 2013. To get a gauge on how Lewis Hamilton was feeling after the race, in an interview with Ziggo Sports, he said that he had no lessons to take from this weekend, but the team definitely did. How big of a blow was this in the title fight for Mercedes? This was a bad look.
I'm in the camp. Where it's like, it's the longest season ever. It's Monaco. This race by definition's an outlier. Maybe things will be fine.
We'll see after Baku.
Yeah, what I would say to this one is it's the first real heavy blow this season that a team has dished out over the course of this season. I don't think we've had a swing as big as 30 points at any weekend so far this year. Mercs, I've always said Mercs have a knack of being good for like one bad round. Like one truly devastatingly bad round every year. Which is ironic because Netflix was in the Ferrari camp this weekend.
More on that in a minute.
More on that in about 10 minutes' time. But as King alluded to, it's a 23, maybe 22 race season. I mean, if you've been reading the travel news lately, things could be a bit up and down over the next couple of weeks. We'll have to wait and see. But it's not a massive blow because it's still relatively close between them in the championship right now. It's just all the work that Mercs have put in over the last two rounds that they may not have won on another day, has been wiped out by this weekend. And that's a shame because Mercs was just starting to get a little bit of breathing room in both championships, and that's now effectively gone.
I kind of fall in the middle on this because really we don't see Mercedes go through this very often. As you said, maybe once a year, at a stretch maybe two. But we also have to remember they were really lucky to get away with what happened at Imola, with one car ending up in an airplane crash, the other one in a gravel trap, bailed out by the red flag, and then being able to cut through the field because Lewis Hamilton is Lewis Hamilton. The thing I wasn't expecting at this stage of the season is that if you look at the two teams, Red Bull's biggest mistake has really been being too passive, not going for the kill when needed, not matching Mercedes strategically. Mercedes has thrown two race weekends right into the bin so far this year. Imola and here. I wasn't expecting that. I honestly figured it would be Red Bull maybe going for the bigger swings and the bigger misses so far. And all week, they seemed to be pretty happy with the car on Thursday, but once conditions cooled off, they went on the wrong side of that temperature window, and there was nothing they could do about it.
Yeah, like, it's funny because I think part of that is because we've never seen Mercedes really in this position before in this hybrid era, where it's like Ferrari was close, but Kimi Räikkönen was never on the same level. It's very similar to what Red Bull is at now, where it's like they've got one great driver who's able to challenge Hamilton and be a genuine thorn in the side of the Mercedes team, and the other one's lagging behind. This was the first weekend really this season where Sergio Perez was brought into play and was able to score chunky points for Red Bull by finishing fourth and coming into play because he started ninth. So, yeah, it's actually Mercs that have had two heavily below par weekends by their standards, and yet still relatively okay championship-wise. I mean, obviously it's not ideal they're behind in both major areas. This is the first time Max Verstappen has ever led a single-seater championship in his career. But it's only
First time Mercedes hasn't led the constructors since Germany 2018.
Christ.
It's been a long old road. And, man, that no-blame culture at Mercedes went right out the window in Monaco.
Yeah, the second point on this was Hamilton right to be so disgruntled at his team? Because Hamilton was not happy at all. Said the weekend sucked balls on his Instagram account after the race. As mentioned, told Dutch media that the team had lessons to take away from it and not him. I mean, King, was he right to be so disgruntled? Because I have a take on this. It's a bit bold.
I genuinely don't know. Like, it's almost like we're making assumptions about what the team is and isn't doing, and we can't be 100% sure. Just like all we have is what the team tell us, which again could be biased one way or the other.
Sure. I mean a lot of it is. Yeah, go on, sorry.
I mean, like, you consider how many times when, like, Mercedes have used the pit stops to their advantage. When, like, for Lewis, when was the last time that a pit stop hasn't either resulted in him going ahead or being in a position to then overtake whoever he was fighting against at the time?
Imola this year. When they botched a pit stop and put him under a little more stress that eventually resulted in him pushing a little too hard through traffic and ending up in the wall. But no, I totally agree with your point, Zoe. The problem for Mercedes fundamentally this weekend is that they couldn't get enough temperature in the front tires to really attack for a lap. Now, as King and I have discussed in the last few days, Mercedes always runs the long wheelbase car, and it's a jack of all trades and a master of most. But it's always been a little bit lanky here, a little bit unwieldy of a weapon around, really twisty, slow tracks. And the systems that Mercedes has engineered to get around that, their pushrod on upright suspension in 2019, and then DAS last year, well, they're either no longer unique or banned entirely.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, it was a much bigger problem for Hamilton this weekend. Bottas was on the other side of the temperature control gauge, and so to speak. Hamilton struggled even more than Bottas did to get heat into his tyres. He was, he qualified in 6th, and, at least Bottas was able to get, 7th? Sorry, 7th, thanks. He was on row 4. Bottas is at least, 3rd, and obviously promoted to 2nd, and we'll talk about why very shortly. And Bottas was still at least on for a podium finish, maybe 4th at worst. And Hamilton struggled and then was put on a bad pit strategy. James Vokes took responsibility for the call and said, yeah, this one was on me, my bad. Like 2 weeks after the sport...
The overcut's always going to be more powerful around Monaco unless you're on 2013-esque tires.
Yeah, and it was obvious to the field that going long was the way to go. This one didn't work out. I found it funny because, days after F1's media celebrates and goes deep dives on Mercedes' brilliant call at Catalonia to go to a 2-stopper and go for the win that way, and they broke it all down, and we all saw it in detail all over F1 TV, and then literally days later, they botch a sitter, and it ended up costing Hamilton 2 spots during the race. He was beaten on the overcut by Sebastian Vettel and Pierre Gasly, who on paper are in much weaker machinery.
When's the last time a Mercedes couldn't undercut an Alpha Tauri or, God forbid, an Aston Martin? But the bigger point of contention that Lewis had with the team over the course of the week, or the course of Saturday, really, he demanded a setup that would let him get heat into the tires. But the Mercedes was just too hard on its tires around here. They couldn't get enough energy in, and what that meant is that they were sliding around, destroying the surface of the tires. Not dissimilar to what Ferrari had with their 2019 car. Lewis very publicly threw the team under the bus about not letting him pick the setup he wanted. But in the race, Bottas's tires melted. Yeah.
He overcooked him, and if his race had gone to plan, like we saw with the wheel nut, there was a risk that Carlos Sainz could have hit him on the overcut. Maybe even Lando Norris, who was running P4 at the time. There was a risk of Valtteri suffering the same fate that Hamilton did in that race. But of course, that didn't matter because we all know what happened at that pit stop.
And that's just it. This is the first time in geez, since 2018, where we go into a race looking at Mercedes thinking, there's really no path to victory for them this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It was trying to limit as much damage as possible, and that damage was done. We haven't really talked about it because there wasn't really much to say. Max Verstappen had a nice Sunday drive around the Principality.
Yeah, easy win. Never really challenged. Carlos Sainz tried to throw the house at it, and every time he tried, Verstappen had it under control. Was never really challenged the whole way through. And it led to one of the most comfortable wins of Verstappen's young career. I say young; he's had 101 races at Red Bull, but here we are. But we've put it off no longer. It's even funny because I can't see Campbell Riverside right now, so I had no idea he was about to start bursting out in laughter. But let's talk about Ferrari. I mean, Ferrari, how did you blow this one? No, seriously. Ferrari probably should have won the win, and maybe even 2 cars on the podium. Charles Leclerc qualified on pole, but then wrecked at the swimming pool at the end of Q3. And I can't believe I'm going to read this next sentence out on my script, but it says, and I quote, Ferrari ignored the opposite side of his damaged car when checking the drivetrain, and when leaving for the sighting lap, had a shock-induced left drive shaft failure, causing a heartbreaking and rare did not start for the hometown hero. At least Carlos Sainz spared some blushes for the prancing horse with second place, his first podium for Ferrari. And I had to put a funny one in here for the question, quote, on a scale of 1 to 10, how big a fuck-up was this for Ferrari?
11.
It was quite nice that they were allowed to leave the country.
Dre, I would go to your scale for this. This was a are you fucking kidding me out of 10 fuck-up.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. You know, Ferrari were legitimately the fastest team around here. Their car was fantastic in slow corners. The power deficit wasn't coming into play, and Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz both looked like threats for pole. Oh, God.
I mean, you have to pin some elements of this on Charles, because if it wasn't for his accident in Q3, this would not have been a problem at all. Yeah. But even so, you expect the team to check the car properly. I mean, look, break curfew for your have your one curfew break for the year if you have to, because
this wasn't,
you are not you're not going to get a better.
No, Dre. This wasn't even a matter of curfew or time limitations.
Yeah, they had the time. They had
the time. No. Their checklist for a crash like this does not involve the other side of the car.
You know, the gif where...
Go ahead, Zoe.
You know the gif of the steward like inspecting the football fans going in, where he kind of just goes like that? That was basically it. That is basically what Ferrari did. They went, fine, we're ready.
Yeah, if you know a little bit about racing cars and you know how different components are affected by shock, you know the gearbox is one of the most sensitive parts of the car, especially if you have a broadside with the wall on one side. And that shock transmitted to the other side of the car, broke actually the left rear wheel hub, which then took out the drive shaft. But it's absurd to me that that's not even a part that you're limited on. Yeah, you can change that however many times you want during the year. What are they, Ferrari? Are they worried they're going to run out of money?
Then that's never a problem for the prancing horse. They spend $300 million a year on car development until now.
And look at where it's going. Look at where it's going.
It was all hubris. It was like, Charles is gonna get his win. It's the 90th anniversary of Louis Chiron's Monaco Grand Prix win. It's in the history books. It's Charles' race. Nothing's gonna
He's
stop
going to have
this.
dinner with the Crown Prince.
Oh yeah.
He'll get to say to his mum that he's had dinner with the Prince.
Yeah. This was going to be perfect. This was going to be the most perfect hometown win on the streets of Monaco, and Ferrari have the most embarrassing goof up I can think of in F1 for a long, long time. That's basic shit. How do you screw that up? Honestly, I just... Like, I remember distinctively being on Discord when that... I wasn't even, like, in it directly because I was at work when this race was going on. And I saw the reaction when, I think it was an interview with Matteo Bonotto where he admitted they did not check the other side of the car. And I swear to God, I almost dunked my head in my workshop toilets out of shock. I was just like...
I was in a call.
How?
I know, King, you can attest to it. I laughed for about 15 minutes.
Yep.
Supporter of the show, Sasha, came in, didn't believe me at first, and then had a genuine mental breakdown in the chat.
Yes.
This is basic... This is basic checking your homework ability for a team of this size. I remember watching, when I was very, very little, an Audi R8 lose a tire at Le Mans. The Audi R8 was very famous for its quick change gearbox. That even if the gearbox wasn't a problem, you could just yank the whole thing out in about 3.5 minutes, sometimes less, and just drop a new one in. How did you not think that the shock of a broadside with the wall wasn't going to affect the other side of the car?
Before
Maybe
this
physics
recording...
work different in Italy.
Maybe they do.
Honestly, like, I was looking at the script for this, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, is there any mitigating factor that could spare Ferrari's blushes at all here? And I could not think of one. It really is that bad. It's like, it's Formula One's version of the Dominic Cummings leak. It's just, no, it really is that bad. They really were that incompetent, and they've cost themselves 25 points and a famous victory.
Oh my god, I'm not so sure if they would have won that race because of the power of the overcut, but minimum 2 cars on the podium. Minimum.
And given that Ferrari are the clear 3/4 team in the field, they're not going to get a better chance to win a Grand Prix this season. This was an open goal.
There is no other Monaco. You might get close, you might fight for another couple of podiums, but you're not going to have a chance at a win with this car.
Maybe Singapore?
Well, at least we don't have to worry about losing that bet. We don't have to worry about losing that bet.
Matteo Bonotto, I've said a lot of really mean things about you in the past, and I still stand by them. But thank you for saving me from watching Driven. My gratitude is eternal. Maybe one day, hundreds of years from now, when we're all transplanted into robot bodies, I might root for your team again. But for now, a small token of gratitude.
So before we move on a scale of 1 to 10, how nervous were you, fellas?
Oh,
I was terrified.
Yeah. Once Leclerc stopped into the wall and no one else could get pole, I was like, "Oh shit, this is over. We're gonna have to watch Driven.
We're gonna have to watch these fucking Driven."
I still love my favorite description I heard in regards to Charles winning it was he tried to do a Schumacher but dumb.
Oh, he Verstappened it.
For those who hadn't seen it, a carbon copy of what Verstappen did in 2018. Took a little too much out of the swimming pool and snapped the right front. Yeah. Push rod. Wow. We actually just had to talk about that. That was an actual part of the set list. I want to go get drunk.
And now the FIA is considering changing the regulations to disallow laps. Well, disallow drivers' fastest laps if they bring out a red flag.
Complete overreaction. Like, this is not a problem.
I'd like to think if Leclerc was trying to deliberately stop qualifying, he would have crashed a little less hard.
Or just parked it in Mirabo, as they mentioned it to Nico Rosberg on the Sky Sports F1 broadcast.
But admittedly, it's a lot easier to bring out a red flag in IndyCar than in Formula 1, because in Formula 1 you rarely ever see a red flag, especially in qualifying.
No, rarely. You've got to basically damage an air fence for a red flag to come out, and that just doesn't happen in qualifying very often. It's
that's why I don't see it as being an overreaction, because even if it does go into place, like, this would be the only instance where it would apply.
Yeah, like, because you just don't see it in that case, and I'm like, that FIA, this isn't really an issue. So if you want to put it in there, fine. You're just never going to end up using it, because this is a unicorn. We've seen this like maybe 2 or 3 times in the last decade where someone's brought out a red flag in qualifying, and normally that's only because of a safety violation, like an air fence has gone up or something like that, or there's damage to a barrier or something.
Since they put in the standing restart rule after red flags, how many times we use that? Once,
I think. Yeah, like, it's not really an issue, personally. But hey, if you want to put it in, fine, I suppose. But, you know, like, in IndyCar, they're very red flag happy. If it's something if there's a car in a gravel trap or in the wall, they'll put out the red flag almost immediately. So it's I think the culture of how they use their flag to make it very different compared from Formula 1 to IndyCar. So that's a bit of a strange one from the FIA, that this is the one where they're going to consider red flags in qualifying, but yeah, not really an issue. But
small side note, Charles Leclerc has not finished or started a race. He has either DNF'd or DNS'd in every Monaco race since 2010.
Yes, I did find that fact out. Where the last time that Charles had finished a race here was in the Monaco Kart Cup, which he had won his class.
You called class win!
No, my favourite stat was the one that Charles informed us of on WTF1's Instagram account, which is when Carlos Sainz gets a podium, Lewis comes 7th, and Charles
And a Red Bull
DNFs.
family. Yeah. It's one of those arbitrary stats where you think, huh. So this is Mercedes' weakness.
yes.
Carlos Sainz podium.
Good for him, man.
Carlos Sainz podium and Charles Leclerc DNFing.
Yeah.
It seems to flow.
Also, yeah, shout out to those two. Like, we had a bit of the old Norris Sainz bromance on the podium, so that got a chuckle out of me as well. So that was quite fun. And before we move on, Sebastian Vettel 5th. Yeah, we'll take that, baby. We'll take that.
Got some, in his own words,
and the
got
church
some
is rebuilt
points
again.
in the bag.
Oh, well, we'll have some of that. Thank you very much. Right. Should we talk about IndyCar, folks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I only have one thing to say in response to this. Death, taxes,
Pancakes.
Sorry!
These are not mutually exclusive.
Depends on the occasion. There was drama at both ends of the grid in Indy 500 qualifying as Scott Dixon qualified on pole for the 4th time in his career, with R.C. Ennison and Charlie Kimball missing the cut on bump day. There were many an eye-popping highlight over the course of the weekend, including Team Penske struggling with not a single car in the top 10 and 2 cars in the last row shootout. One of them being Will Friggin Power, former winner of this race, and Simone Di Silvestro. We also had Dalton Kellett using gamesmanship within the rules to get the final guaranteed spot in P30 on Saturday. And yet more positive news for the youth movement with Rinus VK and Colton Herta also sharing the front row with Dixon. Now, we got some fun things to break down, some not so fun things to break down here, but my first point, I mean, I think it's fair to say, ladies and gents, that the biggest surprise of the weekend was probably Penske's struggles. We know they're not necessarily the best around the Indy 500 layout, but this was real bad. And like, I wanted to talk to you guys and say, well, just how shocking was it? And is this a potentially season-ending month of May?
Well, as Cam takes a drink,
I can't see, so I just have to plow on through that.
This is really good whiskey. Holy shit.
Fair enough.
As Cam takes a drink, things look bad in time trials for Penske, but it is a long, long race. It is 500 miles. There's a lot of time for them to make up ground through the field and get a respectable finish in the race. Don't know if they'll have a car in position for the win, but they'll... The entire race is not based on the 4-lap run in time trials.
Right.
I mean, it was something that the highest up of the Penske ones was their Kiwi, Scott McLaughlin, who's never done the race before.
Yeah.
And when you think about the level of quality in the other seats, I mean, permanent championship threat, Joseph Newgarden. Winner of this race, Will friggin' Power. Simon Pagenaud. and Simona Di Silvestro, who, how quickly we forget, before the debacle of the Lotus IndyCar engine saga, oh, that shit burns, she was quite handy in an IndyCar.
I know, I mean,
and all week, they were just, they just had no speed.
I mean, we did have someone thinking that they were sandbagging, but when you have willpower...
Christopher DeHardy.
Yeah, we're calling him out. Christopher Hardy said that he thought that Penske were sandbagging and that when time trials came around, they were going to be one of the fastest teams out there. Well,
Nope.
I
Not
mean, it was that kind of a... We have seen how, to put it nicely, demented Will get if something isn't going right.
Demented. Wow.
We saw it
That's the right
last
word.
year when he kept wanting to go out to try and get into the Fast 9, with Simon and Joseph basically have to pull him to one side and say, we're not going to make it, stop.
Yeah.
And this year, he was supposed to be on Marshall Pruitt's podcast on the Friday night and basically phoned Marshall to say, I'm not doing this, I need to be in a garage.
Yeah. He needs to put work towards qualifying. I mean,
Roger and Tim would not let one of their main guys who they know can get so trapped in his head get in that state if they're sandbagging.
yeah. And I mean, just to put it in perspective for Bump Day, Will Power left everything and a little bit more on the line. The run that did get him in the field was piss poor. It was slow. Penske's all 5 Penske and Penske affiliate cars had no rear wing wickers, maximum front wing strakes, and terminal understeer.
Yeah.
Which is not how it should work. Will Power hit the wall.
Bounced off it.
A little more than a bounce.
He took half the emblem off.
Yep, took all the Firestone lettering off the tire, knocked the toe out of it, and Will said himself he just went into turn 3 and turn 4 not really caring whether the car had terminal damage or not, because he was going to make the Indy 500 or crash that car trying. And he did.
At 230 miles an hour.
Yeah.
To say nothing of Simona, who, again, just scraped into the field. Not a lot of pace. Go ahead, Zoe.
I have a lot of thoughts on Simona and her team. I'm going to leave that for the moment. But going into the bump day, Simona and Will were hyping each other up. Once they found that they'd got in after sort of hugging and high-fiving and fist bumping with their teams, they went to each other and hugged each other. Like...
There's a level of camaraderie and escaping being sent home for your crown jewel. This race is everything in this discipline. It is the only race that matters at the end of the day.
It is half the season's prize purse.
Yes. And it's just, when you see the guy who won 3 years ago hugging, almost breaking down, crying, happy to be making it in the field.
Relief.
To see Pagano, who Pagano, who got an emphatic pole position and ground the field to dust in 2019. Qualify P26 and basically say there's nothing left in it. This is a team that has won this race 18 times. This is the team that owns this race. It's not good enough.
Yeah,
and it's not like they were complacent after last year. Last year, they could blame it all on Chevy. This year, there's 2 Chevys. One of them's on the front row, one of them's on the second row.
Yeah,
both from Ed Carpenter Racing.
Yeah.
This
and
is
even
all
if
on
you
Penske.
even if you look past the Carpenter cars, Arrow McLaren were fast as well.
They were just outside it.
Penske and Foyt were the 2. I'm gonna say they were the 2 worst teams here.
Yeah.
Point blank.
And at least Foyt got 3 of their 4 cars over the line still. I mean, Charles in our chat sums it up better than I could. Hinch described Powell's run as the most incredible thing he'd ever seen. There's bravery and then there's that. I mean, like Cam summed it up better than I ever could. It was relief. I think more than anything else was the look on Will Powell's face. It was relief. He had just barely got in and made the show. And if anything, they got very lucky that Kimball and Ennison were a definite, a good mile an hour slower than everybody else, really, on paper. And they never really looked like challenging.
We should really mention the other guy on the back row.
Yep.
The man who's has spent pretty much every Indy 500 he's qualified in 31st, Sage Carroll.
The homeboy.
Yes.
The homeboy.
I mean, he went, got 31st, and I mean, again, you saw the camaraderie within the field. You had Marco, you had Alex, you had Connor and his switchblade comb.
So old school.
They actually had to get moved. They were originally, when they were sort of standing there, they were in Sage's pit box, and Ryan Roaring Bolt members basically went, "Can you just move out the box?" Because they didn't want anything to get them disqualified.
No chances whatsoever. But I've said on Twitter before, we've turned Karam into a bit of an inside bit on this show, but delighted he got in. He's a good boy, Sage, really.
He's a wholesome boy.
He's a wholesome boy.
He just forgets about church sometimes.
And we're glad he got in. A 500 without willpower would have been catastrophic. So of course I'm glad he got in.
And then I was beginning to touch on, Top Gun got their car a month ago. The Henderson's team. Shame the Johnny Lightning special misses the field.
I know.
That livery doesn't deserve all that pain. But
for a month out, that's a hell of an effort.
Even qualifying this far down, even if they pull something out in the race and Penske's race pace looks mid at best, there's going to be one hell of a post-mortem on this whole month, really. And in that shop.
Guess which title contenders are at the front of the field? Scott Dixon and Alex Palou.
Yeah.
On
the other end on the good side of the spectrum, all 4 Chip Ganassi cars made the Fast 9.
They had devastating qualifying pace. Really, go ahead, King.
Yeah, and based on all the previous runnings of this races, if you qualify within the first 3 rows, your chance of winning the race itself is 50%.
50-50, and they've got 4 shots at this. I mean, Jesus.
Oh, gee, well, let's look at who they've got. An Indy 500 winner and an Indy 500 winner, and one of the most sensational young drivers in the series, and Marcus Ericsson. Sorry, Toki.
So when you run the numbers in any Indianapolis 500, there's a 50% chance the winner will come from the Fast 9, and Chip Ganassi Racing has 4 of the 9 cars in the Fast 9. So it is close to a 25% chance that a Ganassi car will win this race.
Yeah, I make it about 22%. That's... if you'd have offered Team Penske a 22% chance to win the 500 without even running the race, Roger would bite your arm off. Right here and now.
Well, what percentage did the Mercedes Saurus give him? I give it about a 100.
Does that include the 2% margin of error?
That came into effect for 1995.
Yeah, so it's why we might be able to sit here and say this could be a catastrophic month of May for Penske in terms of the overall championship.
That said, Carb Day was today as of recording, and Scott Dixon led. Second place, Simon Pagenaud. Third place, Joseph Newgarden. We're just gonna have to wait and see.
Yeah, we're gonna have to wait and see. Obviously, a lot of changes have been made to make the race conditions better than last year, but we don't know what overtaking's gonna be like until we actually start racing.
Yeah, much cooler conditions than last year. That's kind of a given because we're running in May, not August. And
I quite liked the qualifying in August, I must say.
Oh, stop it, you.
Really?
Yeah, you see, we got her on the show. She's only just reconstituted herself after the explosion of joy from that qualifying session.
That's what you call it, yeah?
I mean, the other thing with the Fast 9 that needs to be noted is how close Colton was to ruining, because they
two
basically
were just hammer blows for pole. I think the margin was 0.03 of a mile per hour over 4 laps.
Crazy, over 10 miles.
Because I think they made a lot. Ganassi made a last-minute adjustment to Dixon's car off of that, and he was like, "Don't tell me," and just trusted them.
Yeah.
While having a head cold.
Yeah. Man's Dixon. A bit good. What I love about this Fast 9, and we'll move on to our next couple of points, is it really is a little bit of everything. A whole lot of experience. Drivers who last year were out of the series, looking at the end of their career, and the new guard, all kind of mixed in with each other.
Fascinating. It's a fascinating lineup. I mean,
and Marcus Ericsson.
And Marcus Ericsson.
He's new. He's new.
He's new. He's off.
Sophie, this one's for you.
Marcus Ericsson would like to offer you some chalky whiskey. Cam, please stop drinking profusely on the show. I don't want to have to call an ambulance.
No, I'm done. I don't have to talk about Penske anymore. I'm just gonna put it away.
Good man. Now to talk about some of the inner workings of qualifying itself and bump day, we've got to break down a couple of angles on it. First one was on Saturday, right at the end of Saturday, where they were locking in positions 10 through 30, and the guys that were guaranteed to make the show. We had some late drama towards the end of that with, let's just say, a creative use of the rules by Foyt and the Dalton Kellett crew. Who Even before then, we were seeing cars shuffle in, shuffle out. We were seeing literal, like traffic jams in pit lane, determining who was going to get into the queues first. It was chaos. It was chaos on the fast lanes.
It's not about who runs fastest; it's who runs when, and who I can make run when.
Yeah. Now, King, help me out on this one, because it took like some of the biggest brains we have on our Discord server, and we still tripped ourselves up trying to figure this out. But I believe Dalton Kellett had his car parked in the fast lane with about 7 minutes to go. And as the queue went on, it was almost like, you know how in soccer, how a team will time waste towards the end of the clock? They were stretching it out as long as they possibly could before they had to go out and run. But because Kellett's time was already in 30th when he started his run and went again, it was like it was resetting the benchmark to get in. Like, it's...
So when you think about in terms of making the field or not, being on the first day on Saturday it was being 30th, that being the benchmark. On Sunday it was being 33rd. If your time is in a locked in spot in the field, it exists. If you're outside of that, you might as well have not had a time at all.
Yes.
Right. And you combine that rule with Colton sitting in lane 2, effectively time wasting until the end. I mean, it nearly worked. It didn't quite work because Simona got to run in with 7 seconds to go before the gun went off. It didn't matter in the end because Simona's time didn't get her in. It got her into 31st, which, got a first run at the last run shit out, but yeah.
The fundamental problem was that not so much that the rule was hard to understand, it's that the official broadcast of NBC, or rather Peacock, didn't actually explain this while it was happening. So we watched Will go out and set a time that should have been good enough to get him in, but because of the circumstances, he effectively had no time at all.
Yeah. Because also another thing that they didn't explain, because I would say it's equivalent to the offside rule in football, where it's like, so the fast lane, the lane where you get to jump the queue and get to go ahead of people in the slow line, the caveat of doing that is that you lose your time. They didn't specify when you lose your time. Everyone just assumed you lose the time once you roll off to start your run. No, the minute you queue up in the fast lane, you lose your time.
Yeah.
And that wasn't clear as the broadcast was going on. We thought, at the time we were watching it, if I remember correctly, we all thought it was when you set off.
Yeah, it even seemed that, that some of the drivers are confused. Like, on Saturday, it looked like Will Power had no idea that he didn't make the field until the session was over, and he realized he lost his time.
And he was because he was 2 behind Kellett in the queue as the time was going, and Simona had the last run, like with seconds to go left in the day's qualifying. So Power lost his time, despite the fact he was in the queue and didn't get a chance to set another time, essentially. So yeah. Does this actually work? Like, is it more a case of the rule is too confusing, or is it a case of just not so great broadcasting on Peacock's end?
I'd say it's a combination of both. I'd say, first, in terms of the rules, it feels like it's it's a relic of a bygone age when qualifying was 2 weeks long. And it's like, oh, it's okay, we can't run today. We'll come back tomorrow. Not a big deal.
Wait a minute. Are you defying Indy 500 tradition? Next you're going to drink orange juice. Come on, King. I agree. It feels like this is a rule that probably should have gone away years ago. Because, let's be clear, we're not on the original month of May format anymore, and haven't been for quite a while.
No.
The tradition really isn't. It shouldn't really stick around for something so arbitrary.
Yeah, because we're at the point where the chance of you making the field or not is not down to a matter of hours, but it's a matter of seconds. And when the margins are this fine, the rules have to be very concrete. There can't be any, like, leeway or misunderstanding involved. We have to be certain about who is in the field or not, especially when the difference between starting the race and missing the race is up to the range of $500,000.
I mean, we even saw it with the bump day in regards to what counts as cooling the car.
Yeah.
Because...
Which is that's in our next point.
We'll segue into that nicely. Because we watched Bump Day on Sunday, and for lack of a better term, it was dull. It was dull because it was a 90-minute session. Everybody got their first runs in, and then we basically sat there for 45 minutes with a new rule that had come into play for Bump Day now, where the cars, there was no artificial cooling of the car. So, for lack of context, it takes about, as Paul Tracy explained on commentary, it takes about 45, 50 minutes for a car to cool down under its own climate to be able to go for a run. So we sat there after the first runs for a good 50 minutes with no action whatsoever. It was only the last 10 minutes or so we saw the guys that were outside the show, Edison and Kellett, Kimball, I should say, trying to have one last run to try and get into the show, and obviously failing. But I mean, it didn't work, did it?
You are allowed to artificially cool your car, but the penalty of doing so, which they didn't make clear at the time, is that your time on the board would be deleted. And also a part of the rules is that, which I think is a fair part, this next part, is that you're not allowed to go out and set a time again unless you're not in the field. So if you go out again, you're just straight up not allowed to go again. Like, you can't forfeit your time. Well, you could if you artificially cool your car, but again, that's,
Why
If
would
you're
you
in
do
a
that?
loophole, yeah.
It's like it's trying to prevent what happened in the previous day with what Kellett did, effectively running block at the end of qualifying. In theory, on Bump Day, you could just have the people who are already in the field just keep running and not let the people who actually need to get into the field run out on track.
Though, because you can't artificially cool your car, meaning that if someone not in the field beats your time, guess what? You're gonna have to just you're screwed. You don't have enough time to prepare your car to go again. You're just not in the field.
And same deal with, you couldn't change tires. You could only adjust tire pressures and wing angle.
Oh no, you could change tires. Yeah, you could change your tires.
Yeah, this
All
was the other thing where it
redact
wasn't
that.
quite clear.
Yeah.
I think
You're spoiling a pattern here about the broadcast, here by any chance.
it's all fun with Townsend and PT sometimes, and Lee Diffie, and they're great at what they do, but it feels like during these broadcasts, it felt a little more like they were just kind of in a commentary booth having fun with each other while the qualifying session just so happened to be happening in the background.
I mean, they even, obviously, they were broadcasting the draw for the order everyone was going to do their runs in, and it was like they hadn't originally planned to be doing that, and it ended up kind of just being Townsend, and it wasn't Kevin Lee. It's another one of the pit reporters was just randomly interviewing people, and they would then go, "Oh yeah, and this person's pulled this for this person."
Yeah,
and it's like
it just felt.
It's like
when you think of how much
we've seen.
When you think of how much production value that NBC has put into the actual showing of the race, showing of the actual cars out on track, they've done an excellent job. It feels like the human element of it isn't quite up to scratch with the camera production values that they've been putting into it.
Because it is, I wouldn't say a symptom of modern sports broadcasting, but it's, especially if you're one of the presenters, you can't be in a situation where you say nothing, because if you're not doing anything, you're not valuable to the company, and if your contract's on the line, you're gonna want to be involved. You're gonna want to grab someone for an interview to show that, hey, you should keep me on.
Yeah,
Well,
but in trying so hard to not say nothing, they didn't say a whole lot of anything.
I mean, I mean, we're we're not getting Paul Tracy for the full season because he has other commitments. So hopefully,
only 6 rounds this year.
hopefully, a driver who is coming in for the 500 coverage, they may be able to convince her to go into the commentary booth.
Wouldn't mind that at all.
I'd quite like that.
Well, it'd be awkward to get a chance in the commentary booth if he's on a pit box.
No, not that one. The other one with long black, or I suppose Dyer's not got long hair at the moment.
Oh.
Miss Patrick.
Oh, she's not coming back. Unfortunately, she's done with motorsport.
No,
Balls.
no, in the commentary.
Yeah, she's done completely. No broadcasting, no anything. She's done.
No, but isn't she involved in the 500 again this year?
Nope.
Commentary, or she's not even I thought she was still doing the presentation stuff.
Nope.
Nope. Oh, bugger.
It's a shame because she last year I thought she was
She
darn
was
solid
really
as a
good.
broadcaster. Yeah, it's a shame. Which just leaves one big question, and I'm giving you guys, sorry RJ, an opportunity here to change your pick. Knowing what we now know, going into the race this weekend, who do you think wins it now?
I know my pick's still looking real strong.
I don't even
Mine,
remember
not so
what
much.
I think I just killed the brain cells that remember what I picked, and I don't remember anyone else's pick either.
You stuck with your mans.
I stuck with my mans.
And I said
picked-
Alex Rossi.
And I picked Pillow.
Not bad at all. Not a bad shout at all.
I really think Sunday's race, judging on what we've seen so far, is going to be a fight between the top two in qualifying. I really think it's going to be the Dixon v. Herta show. And based on their speed so far, I can't pick between them. It's tough.
Well, there's an Alex Rossi guy who's been a bit mid this year, so I'm probably out of the running on this one.
Well, as the one person who didn't pick.
Sure. Floor is yours,
I
Zoe.
mean, I'm probably going with Herta. Of my boys, Herta is kind of the obvious one. Will, unfortunately,
hell
for
of-
Penske.
When can we say that about this series? It just sucks that he's stuck in a Penske.
Yeah.
What kind of
Sounds
fucked up alternate timeline bullshit?
Basically a back marker.
Marco, they may have possibly fixed everything with his car, but he's 25th. So
The problem
Doesn't help.
is that we're not going to know how these cars race until they do. Now, if these cars can race like they could in 2019, I'd still pick Pagenaud. But we just don't know, because last year I picked Pagenaud, and he went a sum total of nowhere, as did everyone else who wasn't in the top 3 positions.
And the thing is that even if you can't overtake here, track position's still key. And there are ways outside of your own control where you could lose track position even though you're in a faster car. Where unopportune yellow comes out in the middle of a pit cycling and suddenly you're in the middle of the field with the fastest car. And like literally anything could happen in this event, and it usually does.
I mean, honestly, I know who probably my biggest winner is going to be.
Liquor, of course.
Yes. I literally, when I was in Costco today, I saw they had Hotel Chocolat, salted caramel, chocolate cream liqueur, and I thought, yep, that'll go nice. It was
Half of the
straight-
podcast has
I've got
has
straight-
resorted to drinking.
I've got straight
Like I
rye
said,
whiskey.
like I said at the start of when it was qualifying, I saw Marco qualify, announced I was going to make myself a drink,
I remember this.
and I
was
made
here.
myself a milkshake where I just ice cream, milk, and then just poured in I don't know how much Bailey's, don't know how much Kahlua, came back through with it in a mug, and before the fifth card even left, I had finished it.
Oh.
I had not eaten it all that day. It was very obvious.
This bottle of whiskey was quite a bit higher when I started this podcast, and now it's not.
We bring out the worst in everybody. King, help us out here.
Yeah, but I'd just say if you're anyone, especially the three cars in the last row, it's all about simply surviving because there will be accidents and just run long. Just go as long as you can on your tank of fuel as you can. Be the last to take your stops. You'll move up the field. Don't know how far you'll move up the field, but you'll start moving up the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, and above, you mentioned the inevitable thing with this race and the danger. Of course, we hope everyone in the 500 comes out the other side in good health.
Of course.
Is it possible, okay, if I have a slight soapbox moment?
Okay.
Sure, why not?
Just
I have
in
like 5
regards,
per episode.
just in regards to Simone Di Silvestro and Team Petra. Now, I have grown up with motorsport. I grew up with F1 originally and then discovered IndyCar. When I was younger and I watched F1, I never really questioned why the only women that seemed to be around were either sort of they were either sort of the sort of glamour, or it was the PR girl following the driver around going, this is who you need to speak to now, or with the tape recorder underneath them. The first female that I properly noticed that wasn't doing that was Louise Goodman as a pit lane reporter. And then 2006, Indy 500, thought Mario Andretti was in the race, but there was also a female driver. And ever since then, there's always been female drivers in IndyCar. And like even back in 2015 when Grace Autosport was announced, I remembered my reaction was, why? Why do we need this in IndyCar? Because I can see that there's female drivers. I could see there was female personnel in other teams. Why did we need this? I was a lot younger then, but now looking at what Petra Autosport is doing, and even like the impact that's having, how it's women who never thought about going into motorsport but would have loved the chance. These women have been like going to Penske, like up at God knows what hour, to go to the Penske base to practice pit stops. Like they have given everything to get the chance to do this. And we've already seen the sort of impact that's had. We've had girls who they've seen how the pit, all the women on the pits have their hair braided, and they're copying that because that's cool. They're doing this, but they're also doing this thing that's so different, so out there from what you normally see women doing. And I'm definitely appreciating it a lot more this time than when I've heard things for getting more women involved in motorsport in the past. I don't know whether it's because it's not kind of in its own wee bubble like it normally is. It's actually within like a series. It's in something that's still going, and it's something where they're planning for the future. They want to do more. They're already talking about trying to do something with Force Indy to try and continue a ladder with them.
They want a presence here for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, because I think last year, well, not last year, was sort of that warning sign for everyone in IndyCar where female participation in not only the 500 but in the series is not guaranteed. That, especially just heading towards that warning trend where there was definitely a foreseeable future where there was going to be no female driver in the series at all, and no female driver in the Road to Indy. And I think there are only about 3 women in the Road to Indy at the moment.
They're in like the starting runs at the moment.
Yeah, and as good the Road to Indy is on getting talent up the ladder, it's not everyone gets to go up. So having 2 or 3 at the bottom pretty much means you're probably going to have 1 or 0 make it to Indy Lights. And I think it was a point of purpose for the series in general that they need to set what the basement is on female participation. They need to ensure that there is some representation going further, or they're going to end up like Europe, where there's almost no women.
Yeah,
it's a unique opportunity to set the table, something that Europe is still struggling to come to terms with, and it's there is an opportunity to set a benchmark there, and I hope Simona making the show, and I hope Beth and the team. And don't get me wrong, this is a phenomenal achievement to even make the show. I hope
in a Penske.
In a Penske of all things.
Look,
I hope it's the first step in many.
Indianapolis is hallowed grounds, no matter where you start. It is one piece of the Triple Crown. To be there is a big fucking deal. And I am incredibly happy that Simona made the show. I'm disappointed that the equipment wasn't up to scratch for what we've seen her be able to do. And I hope that in the future, that team can improve and climb their way up the grid, because once you prove that it can be done, there's no limit.
Indeed. Well said, Zoe. And and on that note, bestest time we get out of here. But we're a bit late for half the show anyway. But we soldiered through. Fingers crossed this will be up before Sunday. But if it is, just so you know, we'll also be on YouTube with a live watch along of the 500 as well. Hope to see you guys all there for that. This is also for you guys on YouTube that are still watching along. There's we're in double digits still, despite the fact it's 20-1 in the morning UK time. So thank you to everyone that stuck it out. I do really appreciate it.
11 of you, you are soldiers, because this did not start well. We thank you.
It didn't,
so much
but
for watching.
We're incredibly grateful, so thank you very much for that. Hope to see you guys on Sunday evening for the greatest spectacle in racing, the Indy 500, and of course we'll be talking about that as well as MotoGP at Mugello next week as well. Hope you guys look forward to that one. And again, we've barely even mentioned it, but one of the blue ribbon events of MotoGP this year, almost guaranteed to be entertaining.
Hey, if we're gonna take Monaco off of and it wasn't a bad Monaco Grand Prix by Monaco Grand Prix standards. But if we're going to replace it for classic season, Mugello ain't half bad.
Not at all. Mugello Moto 3 is one of the highlights of the motorsport calendar all year long. They'll be going 5 wide into turn 1, and we're all going to blow our nuts off. It's going to be hilarious.
It is the one guaranteed "are you fucking kidding me" out of 10 on the scale every single year.
Pretty much. So be there for it. Also, small chance of rain on Sunday. Just thought I'd point that one out there. But MotoGP in Mugello next week, as well as a full review of the Indy 500 as well. So welcome to classic season. It should be fun for all involved. housekeeping before we get out of here. YouTube.com/Motorsport101. If you watched us so long and you haven't already, please subscribe. Thanks for the compliments in the chat, Daniel. Much appreciated. Subscribe if you haven't already. Facebook.com/Motorsport101. Twitter at Motorsport_101. Our personal handles at Harrison101HD, at CBuckley917, at Ryan Eric King, at Zoeey. And I know he's not here right now, but subscribe to, obviously, follow RJ as well. RJ O'Connell, follow him as well. We're on Motorsport101 Pod on Instagram.
Let's say about RJ. Just put out a nice written piece preview for the 500. We told him that if he put in the same amount of work that he does with Japanese motorsport, that his IndyCar content would turn out great. I think it turned out fantastic.
Yeah.
Go check it out.
Do your thing, RJ. You're brilliant at this. For God's sake, we have to tell you
Don't
every
yell into
fucking...
the mic. You're clipping like hell.
It's late. Forgive me. But yes, follow RJ and follow his work on Race Fans as well. He's doing great content over there, and I'm sure he will do so long into the future. But yes, Patreon.com/Motorsport101 if you haven't already. $5 gets you early access to all of our audio shows. 10 for the supporters club to the Discord, where you can listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded, and on-demand video early access as well. We'll be back for Classic Season Week 2 next week. MotoGP at Mugello and the Indy 500. Can't wait. Until then, I've been Dre Harrison. I've been Dre Harrison. They've been Cam Buckley, Ryan Eric King, and Zoeey Hamilton. Until next time, sayonara.
Later, you all.
Tapping out.
Cam, put the bottle down, Cam.